SUV sales are booming across the board, but small utility vehicles in particular are seeing a meteoric rise in popularity. In fact, just the other day, I had a hotcake salesman tell me that his products were selling like small SUVs. And because of that demand, automakers have released a seemingly endless stream of new small utility vehicles. But despite there being a gazillion small SUVs to choose from these days, I think the best small ute was actually built over 2 decades ago. This is what I'm talking about, Genesis, the first generation Toyota RAV4. Not only was this the first truly mainstream small SUV, but I think it was the best ever built. And today, I'm going to explain why. But first, a little background. Toyota introduced the RAV4 to the United States market in 1996, and it continued on relatively unchanged until the 2000 model year. This particular RAV4 comes from the 1997 model year. Today, the concept of a small SUV is about as radical as eating a bowl of cereal for breakfast, but back in 1996, this was a big deal. Back then, SUVs were these big, lumbering beasts that had the on-road manners of a drunken donkey. But the RAV4 was different. This is based on a unibody platform, and it also has 4-wheel independent suspension, so it drives like a normal car. Instead of having a big, thirsty V8 motor, this has a 4-cylinder, so it was economical to run. The RAV4 was also simple to use. It didn't have a complicated 4-wheel drive system with buttons to push or levers to pull. The RAV4 used a full-time all-wheel drive system that you didn't have to do anything to engage. The RAV4's original recipe was so good that virtually every automaker has copied it. So if everyone has a RAV4 of their own, what makes this one so special? I'll start with styling. This thing still looks great, even though the design is now old enough to buy a beer. And more importantly, I think the RAV4 looks unique with this side cladding, this oversized greenhouse, and of course the spare tire on the back. And if you wanted to stand out even more, Toyota had you covered there too. You could also get this generation of RAV4 as a 2-door hardtop, and they also made a convertible version for some reason. And here's something you might not know. The first generation RAV4 was actually pretty good off-road. That's because this 4-wheel drive system uses a center locking differential that can split power equally between the front and rear axles. On cars equipped with the automatic transmission, that center locker is automatic, but if you went with the 5-speed manual, you actually got a center locking diff button. That center locking differential certainly is a cool piece of hardware, but it's not enough on its own to turn the RAV4 into an off-road machine. That's because the RAV4 has what's known as open differentials in the front and rear. Basically, the system will send power to whichever wheel has the least amount of traction. So even though you have a 4-wheel drive vehicle, if you find yourself on a slippery surface, you might only have 2-wheel drive. But this is Toyota, the same company that makes off-road vehicles like the 4Runner and the Land Cruiser, so they didn't just stop at a center locking differential. If you wanted to use your RAV4 off-road, you could order it with a limited slip rear differential that ensured at worst you'd have a 3-wheel drive RAV4. Now I'm sure some of you are sitting there thinking, geez Drew, if you love the first generation RAV4 so much, why don't you just buy one? And the answer to that is, well, I did. This is my RAV4 and I'll be featuring it on the channel in the coming weeks. Now I'll do the normal stuff like an introduction video and a first drive review, but really I bought this to serve as the basis of this channel's first build. In fact, I've already ordered a lift kit and some mud tires, and I've got a few other modifications in mind. So be sure to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss a minute of the birth of the Toyota RAV4x4.